Have you ever wondered what it feels like to have everything, wealth, power, a name that opens doors, and yet feel utterly invisible inside? To have the world expect greatness from you, while you feel lost, small, and hopeless? This is the story of Ethan Cole, the white son of the billionaire Richard Cole, owner of a corporate empire that stretched across Manhattan and beyond. Everyone assumed he would inherit it all: the skyscrapers, the companies, the legacy. Everyone assumed he would be brilliant, disciplined, confident. But Ethan had a secret. He wasn't any of those things. From a young age, Ethan struggled. At school, he floundered with every test, every assignment. Tutors were hired at vast costs. Psychologists worked tirelessly, yet nothing could reach him. Classmates whispered behind his back, laughed at his failures, mocked him openly. Their cruel eyes followed him through the halls, their smirks a constant reminder that he didn't belong. Ethan tried to appear indifferent, letting arrogance mask the shame. He wore expensive clothes, sported the latest sneakers, and walked with the pretense of someone untouchable. Yet behind the confident facade, there was emptiness. A boy who didn't understand himself, who felt unworthy, even in a world designed to elevate him. Teachers sighed in frustration. "There's nothing we can do," they said. "He refuses to focus." Even his parents, despite their wealth, were at a loss. They couldn't reach him, couldn't break through the walls he built around himself. Everyone had given up. Everyone, except one person. Her name was Marion Davis. Marion was 55, a black woman who worked as the school janitor. To most, she was invisible, an unnoticed presence moving silently through corridors, a shadow in the background. Students rarely acknowledged her. Teachers overlooked her. She wore a simple uniform, her hands calloused from years of scrubbing, her movements deliberate and precise. But Marion noticed things. She saw Ethan when no one else did. She watched the way he walked alone in the hallways, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding everyone. She noticed the flicker of pain behind his smirk, the subtle tremor in his hands when he crumpled a test in frustration. She understood what no one else did. Ethan wasn't acting out of laziness or defiance. He was lost, scared, and aching to find someone who could see him. It all began one afternoon, after yet another humiliating failure. Ethan had just flunked a history exam. His classmates' laughter still rang in his ears as he stormed down the hallway, crumpled paper in hand, fists clenched. He nearly collided with her. Marion was kneeling beside a mop bucket, wringing out a rag. Her eyes met his, calm, unwavering, deep. "Watch where you're going," he barked, trying to hide his vulnerability. Marion didn't flinch. Instead, she replied quietly, her voice carrying a weight that silenced him. "Just a boy who hasn't discovered himself yet." Her words cut deeper than any insult he had endured that day. Ethan scoffed, pretending not to hear. "You don't know me," he said, turning away. But that night, alone in his opulent Manhattan bedroom overlooking the glittering city skyline, her words echoed in his mind. Just a boy who hasn't discovered himself yet. He couldn't sleep. Every luxury in the room, the expensive furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline, felt hollow. He realized how little anyone truly saw him. The next morning, Ethan saw her again. Marion was sweeping near the grand staircase, her mop moving in steady, rhythmic motions. His gaze fell to a small pendant resting against her chest, a silver star, worn but glowing faintly in the morning sun. Something about it intrigued him. Something about her presence drew him in, though he couldn't explain why. Over the following days, Ethan found himself noticing Marion more. She never spoke down to anyone, never drew attention to herself. Yet her eyes seemed to understand more than any teacher, any counselor, any parent had. There was patience, quiet strength, and an unspoken empathy that made Ethan feel seen. Ethan didn't realize it yet, but Marion carried a secret. A method, a wisdom, a hidden strength, something no one could have anticipated. And she had chosen him. She had noticed him among hundreds of students. She believed he could change, even when everyone else had given up. Little did Ethan know, his life was about to be turned upside down. Not by tutors or psychologists, or the endless lectures of wealthy parents, but by the quiet woman everyone ignored, the janitor who saw him, understood him, and carried the key to unlocking a future he never imagined. Because sometimes, the lessons that change a life the most don't come from books or money. Sometimes, they come from the most unexpected people, the ones the world overlooks. And this is where Ethan's journey truly begins. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan Cole's transformation continued in ways no one had anticipated. It wasn't sudden or flashy, progress rarely is, but it was steady, consistent, and undeniable. Teachers started noticing his attentiveness in class, the way he lingered on problems until he understood them, and even the small, tentative confidence that began showing in his posture and expression. Marion Davis never demanded anything. She observed, guided, and subtly challenged him in ways that pushed Ethan to discover his own strength. During study sessions in the empty halls after school, she would ask questions that forced him to think critically, not just memorize facts. "Why do you think this happened?" she would ask. Or, "How would you solve it if you were in their shoes?" At first, Ethan fumbled and hesitated, but gradually he started to answer, forming opinions, making connections, and even offering his own insights. The janitor's approach was simple yet profound. She treated Ethan like a human being, not a failure. She never reminded him of his past mistakes or whispered doubts. Instead, she focused on his potential. And that focus changed everything. It wasn't just academics that shifted. Ethan began noticing things about the world he had ignored. A fallen leaf, a quiet act of kindness from a classmate, a pattern in the way history repeated itself. All of it became material for reflection, and Marion encouraged him to write down his thoughts in a small notebook she had given him. "Your ideas matter," she reminded him daily. "If you don't record them, no one will see them, not even you." At home, Ethan's father, Richard Cole, still struggled to understand the change. The boy who once recoiled at challenges now tackled school projects with focus. The teenager who had once thrown fits over minor setbacks now calmly approached problems and sought solutions. Richard observed silently, pride warring with skepticism. He still assumed some miracle or sudden burst of compliance was behind the improvement. He didn't yet know about Marion. One afternoon, Marion found Ethan in the library, scribbling in his notebook with a look of deep concentration. "You're improving," she remarked casually, picking up a dust cloth. Ethan didn't look up. I think I understand it now," he muttered. I mean, I can do it. I can learn, and I don't feel like I'm failing." Marion smiled. "You've always been able to. You just needed to believe it." That belief became tangible during a school test week. Ethan's hands shook at first, but as he started writing, something clicked. He remembered Marion's questions, her encouragement, her quiet faith in him. With each answer, his confidence grew. By the end, he had completed the test not just adequately, but impressively. When the results came back days later, his score stunned even the most optimistic teachers. But the transformation didn't end with academics. Ethan's personality began to shift. He started speaking to classmates, forming bonds, and even defending others who were being bullied. For a boy who had been isolated and mocked, this was an extraordinary change. Some students noticed the janitor observing from a distance during these interactions, and quietly, they began to respect her as well, though they had no idea why. Marion continued to guide him outside the classroom. On rainy afternoons, she would bring him a warm drink and sit beside him as he processed failures and frustrations. "It's okay to stumble," she said one day. "It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're learning." Those words, simple yet profound, became his mantra. The pivotal moment came when Ethan was asked to give a short presentation in class, something he would have dreaded just months earlier. He stood before his peers, palms slightly sweaty, but the fear was different this time. It wasn't the fear of failure. It was the anticipation of challenge. He spoke clearly, confidently, weaving stories with facts and insights he had learned through Marion's quiet lessons. When he finished, the applause surprised even him. Classmates who had once mocked him were genuinely impressed. Yet, no one in the room realized that the true teacher, the force behind this transformation, was still standing quietly in the corner. Marion Davis, the janitor no one noticed, who had seen potential where everyone else saw none. Her eyes glimmered with pride, knowing that the real lesson, the one that could never be graded, was the lesson of self-belief. In the days that followed, Ethan's reputation continued to improve. His classmates now sought his opinions, teachers sought his input, and even his father began to look at him with a new respect. But Ethan knew the truth. Without Marian's guidance, her subtle questions, and her unwavering faith, none of this would have been possible. Marian had one final challenge prepared for him, a test not of knowledge, but of courage, character, and integrity. It would require Ethan to step beyond the safety of what he knew, to confront a situation that would define him not as a boy labeled a failure, but as someone capable of remarkable resilience and wisdom. And as Ethan approached this new challenge, he carried more than just the skills he had learned. He carried confidence, self-respect, and the realization that true transformation comes not from force, but from belief. Belief in oneself and in the quiet mentors who see us when no one else does. The moment was approaching when the world would finally see Ethan Cole for who he truly was, and Marian Davis would witness the culmination of months of patience, care, and wisdom. The final lesson awaited, and nothing would ever be the same again. The day of the ultimate challenge had arrived. Ethan Cole felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness unlike anything he had experienced before. Unlike tests of numbers or facts, this was a test of character, a situation that would force him to act not for recognition, but for integrity and courage. It started in the school courtyard. A group of students, knowing about Ethan's newfound confidence, decided to provoke him. They spread a false rumor claiming he had cheated on a major assignment, hoping to undermine him publicly. The whispers carried across the courtyard, drawing the attention of teachers and classmates alike. A murmur of doubt began to ripple through the crowd, and for a moment, Ethan felt the old fear creeping in. But then he saw Marian standing at a distance, her gaze calm, encouraging, unflinching. He remembered all the lessons, the subtle guidance, the patient questioning, the faith she had in him when no one else did. Instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, Ethan approached the situation with clarity. He calmly requested to speak in front of everyone, including the teachers and the students who had started the rumor. He explained, without accusation, how the rumor was false, presenting evidence of his own work and methodology. His tone was firm, respectful, and confident. The transformation was evident to all. The same boy who had once shied away, afraid to even raise his hand, now stood unshaken, articulating the truth with grace and composure. Gasps rippled through the courtyard as students realized they had underestimated him. Teachers exchanged surprised glances, impressed by both his courage and the maturity of his response. But the lesson didn't end there. Ethan took it a step further. Instead of humiliating or calling out the students who had tried to discredit him, he spoke about the importance of trust, honesty, and self-respect. He acknowledged that mistakes and misunderstandings happen, but integrity should always guide one's actions. His words were not just a defense, they were a teaching moment for everyone present. Later that afternoon, the principal called Ethan to his office. Expecting punishment or at least a warning, Ethan was surprised when the principal commended him for his maturity and leadership. "You've shown something remarkable today, Ethan," the principal said. "Not just knowledge or skill, but character. That's what will carry you far in life." Marian quietly entered the office afterward, a small smile on her face. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. "Not just the test. Ethan, you proved to yourself what you are capable of." Ethan looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You saw me when no one else did." Marian shook her head gently. "I didn't give you the answers. I just helped you see the answers within yourself." In the following weeks, Ethan's life continued to change. Classmates who had mocked him now sought his guidance. Teachers consulted him on projects and assignments. His father, who had once been frustrated and disappointed, now looked at him with respect and admiration, recognizing that the boy who had struggled was now a young man of intelligence, integrity, and self-confidence. And throughout it all, Marian remained a quiet presence. The janitor, the mentor, the one who had taught him the most important lessons of all. She continued her work in the school, largely unnoticed by others, yet her impact was monumental. Every time Ethan passed her in the hall, he would nod with appreciation, silently acknowledging the person who had changed his life forever. The final moment of the story came on a warm afternoon in the library. Ethan sat at a table with his notebook, reflecting on how far he had come. He wrote a letter, not just about school or grades, but about life, purpose, and gratitude. When he finished, He looked up and saw Marion quietly standing at the doorway. "You've grown so much," she said softly. "Not just as a student, but as a person." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "I know," he replied, "and it's because someone believed in me when no one else did." As he closed his notebook and walked out of the library, the world seemed different. Challenges no longer felt like insurmountable obstacles. Criticism no longer felt like a threat. Every day became an opportunity, a chance to use what he had learned not just for himself, but to help others. And in that quiet school, hidden in plain sight, a janitor watched the boy she had nurtured grow into a remarkable young man. She knew that the most important lessons weren't found in textbooks or tests. They were found in faith, patience, and the unwavering belief that every person has potential waiting to be discovered. Ethan Cole had passed his final and most important lesson. And thanks to Marion Davis, his life, and the lives of those around him, would never be the same again.